Just wanted to share with you my latest little project. It's not enough to do a how-to video on, but I just kind of wanted to share how I did this. I was approached by a coworker who was trying to find an embroidery shop to put her granddaughter's name on a stocking. Well, none of the embroidery shops wanted to bother with one name on one stocking. So I said, I'll take a look at it. I was a little hesitant because she described it as being really furry. And I was like, how furry? So when she brought it into work, I was like, yeah, okay, I can do it. It's just a standard fuzzy stocking. It wasn't really furry. So wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I knew I'd figure something out. So first step in figuring out what to do with it was to just start gathering random things from my sewing room. She wanted red, so I just started pulling red stuff. Red yarn, red embroidery floss, which I have like a huge bin of embroidery floss someone gave me because they had to go to assisted living, but there wasn't a single red skein in that old bin. I think I have 50 shades of peach though, so I'm all set for the next peach project. Okay, I digress. Embroidery floss, yarn, ribbon, cording, just trying to figure out what will lay right and what won't be completely disappear. Do I want to do embroidery? If so, how do I build it up and get it thick enough that you can see it? In the middle of this debate, my sister came to visit me. She was driving through town, headed somewhere else, and she had some cording, and she said, I think you should use cording. So she went and got her cording, and I was like, yeah, but I think it's too big. And she agreed. And I had some cording that was too small. So next day, trip to the fabric store to look for cording just the right size. And I did find two. I was debating between a red sparkly and a yellow. Kind of thought the yellow had a good pop and stood out better than the red, but the only yellow cording the fabric store had just looked like shoelace. It wasn't shiny or pretty or anything. It was just like blah. So red sparkly for the win. Now, when I was playing around with the other materials, I had previously tried pinning things to the stocking and discovered how difficult it was to pin things in place. So, since I knew how hard it would be to pin the cording and get the lettering to look nice, I got on my computer and I printed out, found a font that was a nice basic cursive, printed it off in the size that would fit the stocking. And then I can just pin it to the paper. So I went over to my ironing board and I put down a plastic bag and then a scrap of fabric and then my piece of paper. And then I proceeded to pin the cording to the paper with lots of pins. And then I sprayed it with some stiffener, let it sit overnight. Next day, took a look at it, took all the pins out. It's pretty stiff, but I decided to flip it over and spray it again. I forgot though that when you spray it again, it kind of loosens all the previous starch, but it held together pretty good. I did have to kind of scramble to add a few more pins because it was like melting. In hindsight, maybe one coat would have been fine. So took it off and was very pleasantly surprised to find the right amount of stiffness and flexibility so it would hold the lettering, but it wasn't like rock hard. So then I was able to pin that to the stocking in just a few places and then tack it on or sew it on. The raw ends I had put some Elmer's glue on and tried to tack down or tried to secure that before I cut them. It didn't work great, so I did wrap some of my thread around the ends. And then I just kind of stitched that extra tight and I kind of buried it in the fur. So the raw ends kind of disappeared. They weren't the best, but you don't catch it. Okay, so stitched it on, got the raw ends secured and wrapped to look nice. And then I realized at some point in this, I was like, what am I going to do for the dot on the eye? If I was going to do embroidery, that would have been easy, but I can't cut a tiny little piece of this cording and stitch it on like an eye dot. It's just going to completely disintegrate. So, buttons or beads? And I did find a bead that looked just right. So, attach the bead And then I trimmed a little bit of the fuzz in some areas, like especially like the middle of the O and the L and the A and around the dot on the I. There was just a few places where the fur was kind of obstructing it, so I trimmed it a little bit. And there we go. Coraline now has her personalized stocking ready to go for Christmas, and Grandma is super excited to put all the stuff she has already bought into it. So I hope you enjoyed this peek into my latest project. Have a great day, stay creative, and keep sewing.